Today we're delving into a fascinating concept, spiritual evolution, as presented in an article from the Spiritual Seek.
A very intriguing topic.
The article uses the Bhagavad Gita as a framework. It explores these three types of knowledge, Tamasic, Rajasic, and Sattvic.
And how those ultimately shape our understanding of, well, everything, really the world, our place in it.
Yeah, it's about how our perceptions can either limit us or propel us forward. The article starts by breaking down each of these levels of knowledge, starting with Tamasic.
Described as kind of the most basic level, a focus on the individual, on particulars.
Leading to, as the article puts it, attachment and a limited worldview.
Exactly. They give the example of like a mother who only sees her own child's needs, completely disregards the needs of others.
So a very narrow perspective.
Right, which can lead to isolation, a lack of understanding of how interconnected everything actually is.
Then, the next stage, Rajasic knowledge.
Now, here, there's a recognition of that interconnectedness. Actions have an impact beyond just the individual.
So it promotes cooperation, a broader perspective.
Like working together for some kind of social good, seeing yourself as part of a larger system, not just a single actor.
And finally, we reach Sattvic knowledge, which the article positions as the highest level of understanding.
The underlying unity of all things, rooted in this concept of a universal consciousness.
So someone operating from this level sees
The divine spark in all beings. Actions guided by compassion, and again, that deep sense of interconnectedness.
From there, the article shifts gears a bit, explores this idea of spiritual evolution, a journey from limited to expanded consciousness.
With the Bhagavad Gita saying this process culminates in realization of the absolute spirit.
Complete unity, complete understanding, that connection to, well, the source of everything.
Yeah, and the article uses this great analogy, compares it to a seed containing the potential for a mighty tree. We all hold that potential for profound spiritual growth.
And so the article argues yoga is not just physical, it's a conscious effort to align with this evolutionary process.
Cultivating self-awareness, understanding reality.
And importantly, actively moving from Tamasic and Rajasic toward that Sattvic understanding.
Exactly. Yoga becomes a tool, a facilitator, if you will.
Now, the article then takes this really interesting turn. Starts talking about desire, something often perceived as negative, right?
Right.
But it argues that desire can actually be a signpost, pointing us towards a higher state of being.
The key is, of course, understanding the true nature of those desires. That's where this concept of viveka comes in.
Discrimination, discernment.
Yeah, being able to see the underlying motivations, the implications of our desires, and then using that understanding to guide us.
It even suggests, like, whenever we feel a strong desire, to pause, reflect, ask ourselves, what is this desire teaching me about myself, about my journey?
Using desire as a tool for self-discovery rather than letting it control us.
And this leads into another point the article makes about the limitations of relying solely on sensory experience, on intellectual reasoning to grasp spiritual truths.
It cautions against this purely transactional understanding of God, or even spirituality in general.
It's not just about, like, what we can get, what we can receive, right?
Exactly. It highlights this quote, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."
Suggesting true seeking isn't about personal gain.
Or ego gratification.
It's about this sincere desire for understanding, connection with something bigger than ourselves.
And the article is very clear that authentic spiritual seeking is challenging. It requires honesty, dedication.
It cautions against hypocrisy, seeking those spiritual gains for personal benefit.
It's a reminder that true growth comes from selfless love, from that desire for unity with the divine, not expecting rewards or favors.
Really makes you think about the motivations behind our actions, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It challenges us to examine our own spiritual journeys, to ensure our intentions are pure and our hearts are open to true growth. There's this interesting parallel the article draws to the work of philosopher Johannes Bergson.
Oh, interesting.
He viewed evolution not just in biological terms, but as this universal process.
Yeah, I've read a bit of Bergson. Always found his ideas pretty thought-provoking.
He proposed that evolution at its core is the struggle of consciousness trying to, overcome the limitations of the material world.
So if you follow that line of thinking,
the ultimate goal of evolution would be this, triumph of spirit over matter.
Complete unity with the absolute spirit.
Right, which aligns with what we see in the Bhagavad Gita. achieving a higher state of being through, well, a deeper understanding of reality.
The Gita really emphasizes that true knowledge isn't just about facts and figures, it's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything.
And ultimately, perceiving that divine unity underlying all the apparent diversity.
Now, the article also makes this point, that human life, it's not the culmination of evolution.
Right. It's just a stage.
A stage in this continuous process of growth.
Which kind of explains, that inherent restlessness we feel, the desire for something more.
Like there's always further to go, more to uncover.
Exactly. Further stages of evolution that, honestly, are probably beyond our current human comprehension.
So this yearning, it's not a bad thing. It's just
a natural consequence of our, incompleteness, a drive to evolve, move towards that higher consciousness.
And the article makes a distinction here between evolution as this unconscious process happening in the background.
And yoga as the conscious effort to align with it.
So it's not just about letting evolution happen to us, but actively participating.
Understanding the process, then making choices that propel us forward.
Now, another concept it introduces is atma-vinigraha.
Self-control.
Right, and the article suggests this is crucial for spiritual growth.
We have to, in a sense, control those impulses that bind us to our baser instincts.
To transcend those limitations and move towards something, more spiritually refined.
It's like what might be acceptable on a human level can become a limitation from a higher perspective.
So, just as we restrain certain impulses as we grow up as a society,
we need to refine even those qualities that we might consider good human qualities to progress spiritually.
But it's not just about suppressing those so-called negative tendencies.
Right. It's about realizing higher values, understanding the true nature of desire.
Because desire, the article argues, even though we often see it as the source of unhappiness,
it can also be a guide,
pointing us towards a higher purpose.
And that's where viveka, that discrimination, comes in again.
To discern the true meaning behind those desires.
And use them as fuel for spiritual growth.
The article mentions viveka, along with viraja, detachment, and shad sampat, the 6 virtues, as being this foundation for a spiritual life.
But, and this is important, they're just preparatory steps.
Okay, so what comes after that?
Well, true spiritual knowledge, it requires moving beyond just the intellectual understanding.
To actually experiencing a higher reality.
Directly.
And that's where practices like sravana, manana, and nididhyasana come in.
Listening to the teachings, reflecting on them, deep contemplation. It's an active process.
So spirituality, it's not just about getting rid of the bad stuff.
It's about attaining something, a higher state of consciousness.
Leading to, as the article describes it, freedom and bliss.
And it's ongoing, always refining, always growing.
Now, the article then delves into this relationship between spiritual evolution and control of the senses.
The more we're able to liberate our consciousness from those bodily processes,
the less controlled we are by our senses.
Because desires, anger, greed, all those negative emotions, they often stem from identifying with those limitations of our physical existence.
So to be truly free, spiritually speaking, we need to transcend that.
Cultivate a higher awareness.
And the article really critiques this, like common misunderstanding of spirituality, where people view God as this.
Means to an end.
Yeah, like a cosmic vending machine. Put in good deeds, get out what you want.
That transactional approach, it totally misses the essence of what true spiritual seeking is about.
It's not about what we can get.
It's about selfless love for that higher power, desire for union, regardless of personal gain or loss.
It's like we try to fit God into our limited understanding.
Create a God who conforms to our ideas of comfort and happiness.
There's this example the article gives about this businessman who loses his child and then questions God's existence.
It highlights that tendency to view God through this lens of personal gain or loss.
Rather than approaching the divine with devotion, surrender. And it cautions against turning spirituality into something superficial.
Focus on outward appearances.
Or seeking recognition for our so-called spiritual achievements.
Because true spirituality, it's an inner transformation, a journey of self-discovery, realizing our inherent divinity.
Shedding those ego-driven desires, embracing a path of selfless love, service to the divine.
It's a reminder that true seeking requires humility.
A willingness to surrender our limited understanding to something greater.
The article's pretty blunt, too, about hypocrisy in our spiritual pursuits.
Oh, yeah. It's easy to fall into that trap, seeking spiritual gains for personal benefit.
Or using spirituality as a way to elevate ourselves socially.
But true growth, it requires honesty.
a genuine desire for connection, free from those selfish motives.
It's challenging.
It is. The article makes that clear. True seeking demands not just understanding, but consistent effort. A sincere desire to go beyond our limitations.
It's not just about knowing the information.
Yeah.
It's about embodying it.
Transforming our entire being, shifting from that self-centered perspective to one rooted in selfless love, unity with the divine.
Sounds like a pretty radical shift.
It is, and the article doesn't sugarcoat it. This path, it's not always comfortable.
It demands courage.
Perseverance.
A willingness to face the darkness within.
But the rewards, as the article suggests, are immeasurable.
So it sounds like the article is really urging us to be sincere in our seeking.
Yeah.
To let go of those preconceived notions we might have.
Absolutely. True growth often involves, challenging those comfortable assumptions we hold, confronting aspects of ourselves that we might, typically shy away from.
And it emphasizes that this path of spiritual evolution, it's not passive. It requires action.
Consistent effort. A real desire to move beyond those limitations.
It's not just about sitting back and waiting for enlightenment to strike.
It's about actively engaging in the process.
The article seems to suggest that the real measure of growth isn't about external achievements, but about an internal transformation.
Exactly. It's about the changes happening in our hearts and minds.
This deep dive has been, a lot to consider. If you could strip away all expectations, all desires, what would be left? What would be your true motivation for seeking spiritual understanding?
That's a powerful question for our listeners to ponder.
We encourage you to keep reflecting on these ideas, to continue exploring the concepts of spiritual evolution, the Bhagavad Gita, and everything we've discussed today.